Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Edgar Rodriguez and today I am going to talk to you about Kubernetes just deprecating Docker support and what to do now. Does this mean that it will kill Docker? So Kate Cosgrove tweeted on the 2nd of December. So Kubernetes is deprecating Docker support and you are either nervous or confused, and that's okay. I would like to help you understand what's happening. In this article, I put the whole thread so we can read it very nicely, but I'm not going to read it completely because it's quite long. And it says that since Kubernetes 1.20, you will receive a deprecation warning from Docker. And this will break our clusters. And as you might think, or at least as I thought, Docker is not equal to Kubernetes, which I actually thought. Docker is actually an entire tech stack that includes a thing called Containerd, as well as some other stuff, mostly fancy UX for us as developers, as humans, to interact with it. Now, the problem actually is that Docker is not a container runtime interface. And that means that the Kubernetes team has to maintain a layer of abstraction between Docker and the actual runtime, that is Containerd. And for that, it uses Docker shim. This one right here. So what the Kubernetes team decided was to eliminate the fancy Docker layer, that is for us, fancy commands, fancy dashboards, and just go straight up to Containerd. And this doesn't mean that Docker is dead at all, and it still has uses. For example, for us as humans, I particularly do not use Docker Docker with Kubernetes at all, unless that a project demands it. But I mostly use just straight up Docker, and that's it, enough for me. For my own personal projects, and even in companies that I've been. I've used mostly AWS stuff, and Docker, Kubernetes wasn't as big back then. It is now, probably is great for it, but for very small projects or for having your stack in your own local machine, you don't need Kubernetes. So I particularly don't feel like it would affect me directly. But the thing that really interested me most about this news is that it is a thing between Kubernetes and Docker and how they can remove Docker and still have everything running. So does that mean that Docker isn't Kubernetes like just an orchestrator for Docker? So it's different. So I kind of made a little bit more of investigating about this news. Somebody asked, for example, is a official announcement? And some friends of mine also confirmed that the Docker deprecation warning has been put through the command line interface and in their own page, but there wasn't an official announcement that, okay, now Docker is deprecated. The closest thing that Kat found was just the announcement in a very tiny bullet point in their release, in their changelog in GitHub. And it says, Docker support in the kubelet is now deprecated and will be removed in future release. The kubelet uses a model called Docker shim, which implements the CRI, support for Docker, and it has seen maintaining issue with the Kubernetes community. We encourage you to evaluate moving to a container runtime that is full-fledged implementation of the CRI, v1 alpha or v1 compilant as they become available. So for me, this is saying that the containerization movement has really moved forward, and now things are being much more standardized. So what Docker started, the team behind Docker died, well, the company died, bankrupt, leave Docker to the open source community. And they started this movement, and they actually really proven that this is a way for the future. So even though they are not now as, how will it say, is they are not as standard as the actual community have moved forward, the community hasn't stopped moving forward. You know, they haven't stopped making things to make actual interfaces that abstract us from being married to one specific implementation. Like, for example, you don't have to be married with Docker for containerization anymore, or even to Kubernetes either. Probably there will be much more Kubernetes alternative out there. And thanks to all of this levels of abstraction and standards, we won't be chained to one specific company that offers an open source project for us. So, should I stop using Docker? Well, if you're a developer, fear not. I do not fear anything at all. Docker acts as a human-friendly interface for containerization, and it is already uses Containerd. So going back to why it was very interested in this news was, what is Containerd? Okay, so container. So what I saw at first is people saying, what is this nerd container, like container, and it's not container, it's Containerd. And this is how the whole components of this Docker thing actually acts. And you see, you have the Docker CLI. That CLI is superhuman, the Docker API, the build, compose, container trust and verification. You have authentication, you have security, you have network, volumes, distributed state, secrets, MOAR station, the actual container, the Containerd, that you see that it is the container runtime that is on top of the actual infrastructure, like Windows, Linux, hardware, cloud. What does that cloud even mean? But this is telling me one thing: the actual container runtime, the actual thing that makes Docker a container technology, has been abstracted to this other technology called Containerd, and now Docker implements Containerd amongst much more other solutions. And these are the solutions actually that the guys Kubernetes are saying it's not necessary. And also the guys Containerd said it isn't necessary to actually bring the containerization technology. Like, for example, the volumes or the network or the security is not necessary for actually bring the containerization technology to Docker. So the Kubernetes team is removing all of this, everything, and is just staying with the Containerd. Okay. So the creator actually said, says there is no such thing as Linux containers in the kernel space. Containers are various kernels features tied together. When you are building a large platform or distributed system, you want to abstract layers between your management code and the system calls, and duct tape everything and all these features together to run a container. This is where the container lives. It provides a clear layer of types that perform can build on top of without ever having to drop down to the kernel level. Containerd was designed to be used by Docker and Kubernetes, as well as many other container platforms that want to abstract away syscalls or OS-specific functionality to run containers on Linux, Windows, Solaris, on other OSs. With these users in mind, we wanted to make sure that Containerd has only what you need and nothing they don't. Realistically, this is impossible, but at least this is what we try for. So this is what I was saying. They actually remove everything else, and this is the abstraction to the actual OS. So all of this part of our container, the machine that we enter when we enter a container is brought thanks to Docker, but it's not actually the virtualization or the containerization, the abstraction to the OS. So with this git blocker, and as already told you, it will not. Let me know if you already use any other alternative to Docker, because I myself haven't tried anything else. I haven't needed. I actually find it quite easy to just like use Docker with Docker Compose even, that is also ultra deprecated, and I very rarely use Kubernetes at all. Because Kubernetes is, to manage actually infrastructure on the cloud. But for my local files in my computer or for my small applications in the cloud, I just need one container for, let's say, the application itself, and the database is usually managed by another database specific platform. And I don't do distributed systems that much in my time right now. But when I used to do it, we should definitely use Docker. So I think that it still has a place for solo developers and for non-distributed applications that actually do not need Kubernetes, or they don't have to be as elastic and responsive and all those fancy words that is nice to throw out there, but actually your application will potentially need a long time until it actually needs all of that stuff. So yeah, I do not rely on Docker. And if you actually do use something else on different, if you use Kubernetes, let me know. Is this actually affecting you in some way? Some people say that it's completely transparent, but I'm not sure of that. And as today I'm not involved in a project using Kubernetes, I do not know. So I would really like to know, how has this affected you on your team? So thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video.